be right. You and I both. I'm ecstatic at this moment. Can you state your name and
Opal
age?
Lee, and I'm 95 years old.
Can you describe where you were born?
Marshall, Texas, about 30 miles from Shreveport.
Tell me your earliest memory from Marshall, Texas.
Well, I was too young for kindergarten, and my mom had asked the kindergarten teacher to let me go to school. She finally consented, but she called my mom and told my mom to come get me because I was fighting and biting and disturbing the class, except it was around Christmas time and all the kids had parts they were learning for Christmas. They were dropping out like flies with the flu, the colds and whatnot. And I knew all their parts. So the Christmas play went on. Things turned out right nice. After that, I could do no wrong.
At what age did you decide you were going to be a school teacher, and why?
What age did I decide?
You were going to be a school teacher.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't decide, it happened. I finished high school at 16, and my mom had planned to send me to Wiley back in Marshall, and I got married. She was so disappointed. And it took me 4 years and 4 babies to realize I was going to have to raise my husband too. So I cut my losses and went home to my mother with 4 babies and said, I'm ready to go to college now.
So, at what age did you conceive your first child?
My first child was born when I was 17 years old.
Were you married?
Yes.
What was your wedding day like?
Wedding day at my church, Baker Chapel, African Methodist Episcopal Church. I had friends from school, and one played the wedding march. My mom didn't attend. She was so unhappy with me because she planned to send me to college. But it was a small wedding.
What would you say to young girls who are thinking about or involved today? How does having a child affect a woman's freedom?
Oh, I'd advise all young women, the girls, to please put marriage and having children on hold until they get an education, until they are able to sustain themselves. We all want a husband and a home and children, but sometimes it comes at a cost, and it doesn't have to if we plan. So I would advise young women, don't do like I did. Take a lesson from an old lady.
When Juneteenth showed up in your life, where were you?
Marshall, Texas. And we would go to the fairgrounds for Juneteenth celebrations. It was like Christmas. There'd be baseball games and food. There'd be speeches and food. There'd be music and food and food and food. But when we moved to Fort Worth, not so much. People celebrated with their friends and in their backyards. But I met Lenora Rolla, tall, straight, in her 90s, didn't wear glasses. City of Fort Worth had asked her to gather the materials that the blacks had contributed to the growth of Fort Worth, and she could find absolutely nothing written. Nothing. So she started the Tarrant County Black Historical and Genealogical Society, and one of its programs was Juneteenth. I remember one in tiny little Sycamore Park. Paper says there were 30,000 people in a 3-day period, 10,000 people a day. And did we have fun? Historical Society took exhibits to the park, but I don't think anybody paid any attention to them. And park people pull a plug around 10, and that meant we were all to go home. But this time, I climbed on a flatbed truck and stuck that plug back in, and we partied till dawn. Now, I met Dr. Ronald Meyers, who was a medical doctor, a minister, and a jazz musician all rolled into one. And Dr. Meyers was responsible for some 42 or 43 of the 50 states having Juneteenth celebrations or observances. And I think maybe some of Doc rubbed off on me because he was adamant about Juneteenth being a national holiday.
So let's talk about that. Why was he adamant, and why is it important for all black people to get excited and inspired about Juneteenth?
Not just black people. For too long, people were under the impression it's a black thing or a Texas thing, and it's not. It's a freedom thing. Juneteenth means freedom. And I don't know if you know the story of how General Granger made his way to Galveston with several thousand colored troops and told the 250,000 enslaved people there that they were free. I don't know if you know that he nailed that General Order Number 3 to the door of Reedy Chapel, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And when those people came in from work and somebody read that to them, they started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since. And we need to be aware that freedom is for all people, and it should be celebrated by all people. I advocate that we celebrate from the 19th to the 4th of July. We weren't free on the 4th of July. So, I'm hoping Juneteenth will have everybody thinking of freedom. Everybody working toward freedom for everyone in these United States.
For those who haven't had, and obviously it's a pleasure for me to meet you, it's a pleasure for me to meet you. But
Thank you.
Literally, what was it like to be next to a black man who wanted recognition nationally for Juneteenth? What rubbed off on you? What was he like? What were the characteristics that he had that just...
This was a young man,
His name?
Ronald Meyers, who was from Wisconsin's Madison, around that area, and he'd gone to medical school, and of course they would owe for their college tuition and whatnot, their schooling. And so one of the things they told those young people, they were going to send them to areas to work, and perhaps that was going to be paying off some of the expense. I don't know. But he ended up in Mississippi. And I think it was Biloxi. I'm not sure. But wherever it was, they told him it was too poor for him to stay there and help those people. But he stayed. His family's still in Mississippi. So Doc had a way of presenting himself to you. He was jovial. He could be serious about things. And I'm sure helping people with their medical problems in that area was paramount to him, but Juneteenth was a passion. And I still think some of it rubbed off on me.
So if you could remember 2 or 3 things that he shared with you about Juneteenth that we all need to think about.
He said Juneteenth might not become a national holiday in his lifetime, and it didn't. And he said that it was going to take each of us to make it a national holiday, not just me, because so many people were responsible for our having Juneteenth a national holiday. And he said, if you start something, like my grandparents and my mom have told me for ages, if you start something, finish it. That was Dr. Meyers.
When you think of the Historical Society, because walking up, I saw the Historical Society. Mm-hmm. Why is it important for us to study our history and know our history?
It's so important that we actually write our own history. Others have done it for us for centuries, and they leave out so much. And then you've heard the adage, if a people don't know where they came from, they don't know where they're going. And that's what's happening to us. If we don't insist that our young people know our history, then we're doomed to repeat it. I've written a little book for children called Juneteenth for Children, because I want the youngsters to be aware of what actually happened. I want us to be able to heal from what happened so that it never, ever happens again. And so the youngsters must be given an opportunity to make decisions for themselves. I don't know. Am I preaching to the choir?
I'm not certain. We know you're not preaching to the choir because you're still doing what you're talking about, Juneteenth in our history. But just from those who have never walked through time, what was it like to see the black community move to the point where you saw civil rights? What did it mean to you to see civil rights and then figure out that now we saw George Floyd and we saw Kamala Harris enter the White House as a black woman?
Well, it goes back to the fact that we make strides. Before Dr. King gave us a push in the right direction, Malcolm X, there are others, Sojourner Truth. There are others who have done, and I think the Floyd affair and others, the Black Lives Matters, we seem to have a surge in the right direction. We're pushing forward because we're never given anything. We have to sort of take it.
Say that again.
We're never given anything. We have to take it. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that we don't have guns. So we have to use our minds. And it's important that our youngsters be aware that they need an education so that we can surmount the disparities that are all around us. The joblessness, the homelessness, the health care that some of us can get and others can't, climate change that we are responsible for desecrating our earth. You know, I'm afraid that if we aren't all careful, we're all going to hell in a handbasket because we are not taking care of our environment. And nobody seems to remember about civilizations that have come and gone. And ours could do the same thing. I don't worry about it, but I try to mention it from time to time.
Let's talk about black business women in your lifetime. Let's talk about why young black women, women in general, have been business leaders. Can you share how and what you've seen and why it's important for them to understand that that's part of the freedom?
Oh, I'd go back to Madam C.J. Walker and the young woman who had a bank called the Penny Bank. I think that it's not just black women, it's just women in general who have been regulated to the house and raising the children and given that role and told that we couldn't do any better when we found out that we could. And so now we are CEOs of big companies. We have more than hair product companies. We are entrepreneurs in our own right. And so I would tell the young people, make an effort to try your wings at entrepreneurship before you settle down to marriage and a family. Because marriage and a family is a full-time job. I want the young women to know, black, white, Mexican, Asian, that we too have a great deal to contribute. And having our own business is one of those ways.
Can we talk about freedom? Obviously, women and the mortality rate of women, there's a huge disparity for black women. How does health and freedom go together?
Health and freedom? Well, that's going to bring in the abortion rights. Women need to be able to control their own bodies. They need to be able to make the decision when they want children. And they don't need to have to worry about families and business. They need for others to understand that they have so much to contribute. And freedom to learn and to produce is our right as much as it is a man's. So I'm advocating that young men, women make up their minds. If they want to be a part of the workforce, or if they want to be mothers and take care of the family. But I really think So many of us are having to do both. Some of us are doing fairly well with it, but they both need our undivided attention.
Healthcare. Just black people getting health care.